What is up, my friends? We are back with another video. We are going to be reacting to a smaller channel named Metropolitan. He seems to be a philosophy student or has some degree in philosophy. And he released a video that came across my YouTube feed today titled Warren Smith Cannot Comprehend Slavoj Žižek. Excuse me for my terrible mispronunciation. Now, this was interesting to me because I have somewhat strong opinions on both of these people, despite the fact that I haven't engaged with them too much. And when I clicked it, I heard this guy's commentary, and I very much disagreed with it. So I thought, if nothing else, I can offer another perspective, and we can generate a cool discussion. I'll try to go easy on this guy, but I do very much disagree with his claims made in this video. It's just amazing to me that this is the video you would wheel out to demonstrate that Žižek is more intelligent than Warren, because I am shocked how unscathed Warren came out of this video. If you would have told me going in, hey, Warren Smith is going to debate Žižek, I would have been like, oof, that's going to be a problem, and I'll just play one-on-one basketball against freaking Chris Paul. How about I do that? It's not going to end well, but I was blown away, and that's kind of a good segue. So on this channel, we know past and future shape the present, therefore our present. So I've had past experiences with these two. In the interest of being honest and just kind of being forthcoming with my biases, I'm just going to explain them. I'll start with Žižek. I don't get it. I'll be honest, I don't get it. I don't engage with his work a ton, so maybe that's it. But from my perspective, every clip I've seen of this man, I've been unimpressed, severely unimpressed. And I'm also incredibly confused as to why he has conferred the high status of this incredible philosopher. I mean, the title of this is Warren Smith Cannot Comprehend Slavoj Žižek. This is going to take on an ironic significance as the video goes, because in reality, no one can comprehend Slavoj Žižek, because Žižek can't even comprehend it himself. I've never seen a clip where he actually says something where I think, wow, that's like really insightful and really intelligent, and I never would have thought of that. That's an interesting perspective. Now, I'm willing to admit fully that Žižek's IQ is much higher than mine. It's much higher than Warren's. I will get there. And I'm willing to fully concede that he is infinitely more well-read than I am. It's got nothing to do with that. I just don't understand what it is. I just don't get it. Now, maybe I've only seen 7 or 8 clips out of 10,000, and there are 9,992 of him sounding incredibly intelligent and erudite, and I've just missed it. So in the comments section, please let me know. I don't get it with Žižek, and that leads us to Warren. Now, Warren, I should have stronger feelings for because we generally agree politically, generally. I think the way we got there sometimes is a little different. But Warren's like a right-wing, I guess, cultural commentator, cultural critic. If I'm being honest, he's a little bit of a Timu Andrew Wilson. And I'm a little confused because if you go into the comments of his videos, they're all in agreement that Warren is this wise, erudite, deeply intelligent man. And I don't say this to be disrespectful. I just don't quite see it. The way I view Warren's videos is kind of like fast food. It's comfort food that's cheap, it's quick, it'll parrot back to you what you already believe. If you're bored, you can watch it, and then you move on. I would never watch Warren's videos for deep philosophical analysis. So I'm happy to concede that Žižek is far more intelligent and well-read and erudite than Warren, which again is why I'm shocked that this guy wheeled out this clip to demonstrate this, because I was just blown away by this performance. It was just mind-blowing. So without further ado, let's get into it. They're going to argue about communism, why Žižek identifies as one, and we'll just take the video as it is.
About the left that I've been seeing in the past years.
By the way, we jumped in about 7:25 into this video. The first 7 minutes, 20 seconds were fine. It was just classic, typical leftism stuff. It's nothing that impressive. I don't mind refuting it, but it was a little more partisan for my taste, so we'll just get into this.
So, I would also love to challenge you on this idea, because I have the opportunity to speak to what people consider to be the most dangerous philosopher in the West or to the West. And I believe they call you that because you identify as a communist. And I would just challenge you on, why are you comfortable describing yourself as a communist when over 100 million people have died under communism?
Okay, so I say this respectfully. I don't mean to talk down to Warren, but I'm not sure he can philosophically justify this. I only say that, by the way, because I know he's not he didn't do like a philosophy major, and neither did I, by the way, so don't think I'm coming down from the heavens to figure it all out. But what Warren is asking is he's saying, look, when you look at communism, It's been applied multiple times. It always ends the same way: extreme murder, torture, imprisonment, famine, starvation. The death count is obscenely high. And I'm confused as to why a philosopher who's supposed to be focused on truth, on ethics, would identify himself in 2026 as a communist. That is confusing. So, philosophically, excuse me, let me silence my phone. Philosophically, what Warren is asking in Heidegger's language is, why should I sacrifice the pre-theoretical mode of being for a purely theoretical mode of being? What the communists like to do is they like to play a purely theoretical game. And the reason why they do that is because they know if they don't play a purely theoretical game, the argument's lost. So remember, if you watch my video covering Alex O'Connor and Destiny, we've talked about at least two different modes of being when it comes to engaging with something. We have the pre-theoretical and the theoretical. So let's take something like joy or anger. Joy is a reddening of the cheeks, maybe tears start trickling from the eyes, its palms start getting sweaty, you get flustered, you get butterflies, and maybe you are automatically compelled by your pre-rational instincts and emotions to hug someone or give someone a kiss. The point is that the pre-theoretical mode of being with joy is not that it is a theoretical object to be philosophically analyzed in this theoretical metaphysical space, but a pre-theoretical entity that, rather than you controlling it and you manipulating it theoretically, it controls you and manipulates you. It's only after you impose space between yourself and the world and think about joy that its beingness, or its being, is transformed into the world of abstract representation. So no longer is it that visceral, pre-rational given experience. It is now a theoretical object to be analyzed. And when that happens, you get the Marcus Aureliuses of the world, right? Anger is something that comes and goes in moments, and you get all these claims about what anger is because it's an object, and now we can ascribe all these philosophical definitions and all these philosophical qualities and all this great stuff. So what the communists like to do is they want to gaslight me into thinking that we are purely theoretical beings. A purely theoretical mode of engagement with communism de-worlds it, as Heidegger would say, and puts it up here. So then it just becomes this sort of abstract relative thing. Well, it can be manipulated. Well, you can't justify your opposition to it in a state of pure theory, so we're going to try it again. But what Warren is saying is, hold on a second, that's communism in theory. Communism in theory has been practically applied. So integrating the theory of communism with the pre-theoretical application. When I look out into the world, and I see the Soviet Union, I see Mao Zedong's China, I see Pol Pot, and I recognize, wait a second, if I just employ a basic level of empathy, I see, hold on, the qualities of extreme suffering, pain, torment, and their pre-theoretical mode of being, which means the pain and the suffering that you experience cannot be rationalized away in a purely theoretical space. Why would I ever want to tie myself to this political organization or political structure? Why would I ever do that? The pre-theoretical mode of engagement or mode of being with communism is so unspeakably horrific. Why in the world would I ever jump to the world of pure theory, especially when we're not purely theoretical beings floating around in some invisible abstract space like a droplet of milk in a glass of water? No, these theories have been applied. The pre-theoretical and the theoretical have been applied. The results are in. Why are you justifying, or why are you identifying yourself as a communist? This is why the communists like to play a purely theoretical game. They don't ever want to appeal to empirical results of the application. So let's see if this guy falls into the trap that
I'd also be so curious to know who he's talking about. Žižek is a popular philosopher. He's an interesting philosopher, but he's not that relevant. Like his weirdo left Hegelian but kind of anti-Marxist school of thought is almost wholly irrelevant. You know, he's an interesting guy in academics. He's very good at speaking in spite of his speech impediment and eccentricities. He's an interesting guy to listen to, but most dangerous philosopher to the West, I feel like that'd be much more squarely put on someone like Dugin.
Slavoj?
Easy to answer. First, I describe now myself as moderately conservative communist, crazy as this may sound, but let me answer you very seriously.
By the way, just for the record, only midwits focus purely on semantics. I'm not saying you can't have any semantic discussion, But at the end of the day, conservative communists, who cares if it's a semantic contradiction? Let's just focus on the substance. Oh. Whoa. There we go.
You know Peter Thiel, when he defined Antichrist in a public intervention a month or two ago, he defined it through three features. Those who are too obsessed with the danger of artificial intelligence, those who are too obsessed with environmental problems, and those who are too obsessed with war danger. I think that these are real, actual problems. I'm not a catastrophist. I'm not saying whatever will happen. I'm just saying something so basic is changing, and my solution is not, of course, what we knew as communism. But I think, and I'm not even very original here, that the problems we are facing, look, COVID, there, I think...
Let's pause real quick. Let's just do a little quick recap. So Warren asked a very direct question. By the way, this is the easiest way to piss me off. If you want to piss me off, or if you want to ensure that I just never engage with you in the future, this is what you do. Warren asked question A, why do you identify yourself as a communist? And Slavoj, or Žižek, I should say, his answer to this is Peter Thiel, AI, the environment, and war/danger, and COVID stimulus checks. What am I supposed to do with that? Why are you a communist? Oh, Justin, why do you identify as an anti-rationalist? Well, after the 2023 treble, I think Manchester City got really complacent. I think we had Joao Neves on the market, we had Alexis McAllister on the market, and who did we get? Mateus Nunes, who I like. He's been a good right back. We had Kvaratskhelia. All these guys are going on to PSG. Alexis McAllister won the Premier League with Liverpool. The arrogance to assume, what does A have to do with B? Why do you identify as a communist? It's a direct question. Please just give me a direct answer. It is not intelligent for me to ask question A and to you give me answer Z. How is that intelligent? This is like borderline schizophrenia. It just blows my mind. And also, there's another point he just raised I cannot believe he just said, but...
I think Trump and Boris Johnson, certainly not communists, acted almost in a communist way. Every family got a...
So, I just remember...
So apparently, communism is unironically when government does stuff. Did you guys know that? Because when I was young, when I was a kid, anytime one of the adults said, I think we should have a school lunch program, all these right-wing guys in my town would say, oh, he's just a commie, he's just a socialist. And then, of course, the left would make fun of that because it's ridiculous, the idea that you would identify any government action designed to increase the qualitative, the quality of the collective or just society as socialists. It's ridiculous. But now we are unironically claiming that in times of extreme pandemic and extreme exception, that giving out $2,000 is actually unironically communism. Again, I don't want to get into the semantic thing, but this is ridiculous.
It's not quickly because, again, very entertaining presentation, but it's a little confusing what Žižek is saying.
It's really not.
What he is claiming is that in the past you have Marxist-Leninism, Stalinism, Maoism, whatever, these older forms of what you would consider communism, that they were addressed.
Do you like how we put communism in quotes? So the communism that's actually been tried in history, in reality, not just this dude's world of pure theory, that's not real that's communism in quotes. But this conservative communism, where we're just a social democrat, that's real communism. Got it.
A completely different set of problems with a completely different set of ideas. They failed. It didn't work. So when he says he's like a conservative communist, what he's referring to is this idea that as capital, as liberalism has developed, we're starting to come across problems that mass democracy seems unable or unfit to solve. An example being environmentalism, right? Where it doesn't seem like Western democracies are able to efficiently deal with these issues because their self-interest is being subverted constantly. So
First of all, I don't buy the environmental scare. I'm not saying there aren't environmental problems, but I don't buy this doomsday. I mean, this is kind of obvious, but there's only so many times you can make doomsday predictions and be proven laughably wrong, and still have any credibility. That's number one. Number two, I've just seen. I won't pretend to be an expert on this stuff, but I don't buy into the ecological doomsday, excuse me, doomsday narrative. That's number one. Number two, again, what about this is one of the most interesting philosophers in the world? If saying that the government should give out money that it takes from taxes and shit, what was the point he just made? Shit, hold on.
Feel like they have to fight against it, even though it might be against the interest of the civilization itself, and that
and whining about the environment and ecology makes you the greatest philosopher in the world, buddy. I got a 12-year-old nephew I'd like to introduce you to. I mean, what about this is like genius?
Stack enough of those kinds of issues.
And also, by the way, what are you appealing to? Are you saying that when we allocate scarce resources, not through a free market price guided system, but by centralizing all power into an economic planner, and then they plan the economy, that has a great historical environmental record? I don't think so. I actually think Western democracy, Western liberalism, and Western capitalism does a far better job at helping the environment as if only we embraced nuclear energy, but we don't because we have a bunch of, I don't know.
On top of each other, you eventually just have demise. So what Žižek is going to point to with the COVID example is we've already seen what he calls a version of communism, this newer version of it, which is where the state is actually willing to do full market intervention. It's
yeah, guys, government does stuff. That's communism, unironically.
Willing to shut down an economy, in an authoritarian fashion. That it's willing to, distribute a form of UBI in that sort of state of emergency, but it's willing to provide immense business loan structures that would otherwise be unheard of.
Oh, are you saying, first of all, he's giving the entire game away. When he says that you can shut down the economy authoritatively and distribute resources and money. I mean, that's what he wants to do. He's pointing at COVID as a good thing. That's the stimulus checks as a good example of conservative communism. Number one, now you're making economic claims. First of all, you're making very basic economic claims. These are social democrat claims. I don't know why you're identifying as a communist. It's very obvious that the only reason you want to identify as a communist so you can satisfy to yourself and others that you're just a cool little rebel, man. You're against the system because you want to give yourself a psychological excuse to fail or to not try. That's what this is. You're not a rebel. It's embarrassing. Number two, let's say COVID. I'm really glad you brought that up because that's a terrible example of, or a really great example of terrible economics. He talks about the stimulus checks as if that is a desirable and sustainable thing. Here's the problem. Obviously, that will require high taxes, and the same high taxes that would be required to create and sustain the program of redistributionism is exactly that which prevents its possibility. Because wealth, I'm sorry to break it to you, leftists, is created. It is not this magical, numinous thing, like, to put it in Gebser's language, people in the magic structure view the world, this ever-present, collectively available thing where if I just sort of tinker with it, things magically appear. No, wealth is created. It goes through a process of creation, and it only will do so when certain conditions are met. A profit incentive, strong property rights, low taxes, lowest regulations as possible. This is what creates wealth. Wealth, that is to say, is not distributed, as this guy is gesturing at. Wealth is earned, and only after you allocate scarce resources so effectively and so efficiently that you provide a product or good or service at a price that others are voluntarily willing to trade their money for. It's got nothing to do with this sort of magical, oh, the wealth is just sort of there, and the only question left is to distribute it. Absolutely nonsense. Wealth is not distributed in the same way that height of the Baltimore Orioles baseball team is not distributed. There is a distribution of height. That does not mean height is being distributed from some inaccessible, I guess, spiritual place. It is absolutely absurd. So you pointing to this very basic bitch economic policy and then saying, well, look how amazing conservative communism is. I completely misunderstand economics. I have no idea about the process of wealth creation. I'm taking a purely philosophical lens to economics, which probably isn't the best idea. And now I'm trying to pretend that this is some new trailblazing idea. It's ridiculous.
this all sounds like capitalism, but he's arguing that when you think about the state stepping in that much to that extreme of a degree, how is that not just a form of communism?
Oh, and also, it's funny that he mentions this again as a good thing. Keep that in mind for later on when he complains about the economy. Inflation in economics means a general rise in prices. Okay? It's a general rise in prices. There are probably multiple ways that it can occur or emerge, but one of the main ways it occurs is when the supply of currency outweighs or outnumbers the supply of goods and services. So more dollars are chasing less goods and services. Not good. You don't want that. What do you think increased inflation? Do you think decreasing the supply of goods and services and turning on the printer and increasing the supply of currency, do you think that helped prices go up or go down? They obviously went up. So this guy is unironically pointing to a disastrous economic policy, and I will criticize Trump for this, a disastrous economic policy that we are still facing today, and then he's going to blame it on us or on capitalism and explain how Warren doesn't actually understand anything.
How are we not going to just have to keep seeing more and more interventions like that as these problems balloon? You can disagree with that, but it's a pretty sophisticated idea that you have to break down like at the substantial level.
Sorry. All right, I'm not going to be mean. This guy seems like a quote. I'm not going to be mean. It's pretty sophisticated. Government does stuff is unironically communism. And hey, guys, why don't we just make taxes really high and redistribute everything? Yes, my 12-year-old nephew gives me this every week. Thank you. Very sophisticated.
For $2,000 and so on, direct state intervention and so on. What I think is that the crisis we are confronting, no reason to panic, but nonetheless, cannot be resolved, it cannot be even properly approached through the standard liberal, democratic, multi-party.
And what's weird about this, if you might think about it for a second, this is kind of why Žižek gets a lot of flack from the left, not even the right, which is, again, why is he calling the most dangerous person to the right, whatever. A lot of what Žižek says sounds like the alt-right. He's incredibly skeptical of mass democracy. He's incredibly skeptical of the post-war liberal consensus because he doesn't believe that the people are able to address these issues.
And to be clear, when you say you're incredibly skeptical of mass democracy and liberalism, all this stuff, what you're saying is you're incredibly skeptical of the mental consciousness structure. That's what you're saying. You're saying you're skeptical of division. You think division has gone too far and it's torn asunder the whole, and then the whole cannot be repaired. That's what you're saying. The reason why the far left and the far right horseshoe as some people say, it's not because of some horseshoe thing, it's because both regress into what Jean Gebser would call the unperspectable world. And what do those two consciousness structures emphasize? Unity. So all division goes out. That means no multi-parties, no Republican or Democrat, it's Republican or Democrat, and that's it.
Appropriate fashion. So, when he calls himself a conservative communist, in practice, with the way that the world is already developed, in terms of actual policy, he actually does lean pretty conservative, especially when it comes to issues of immigration and culture. So let's see how Warren breaks that down.
Political system.
So are you pushing for a uniparty? Because people would claim that that's one of the primary attributes of fascism.
Am I pushing for
a non-multi-party?
So it's even, again, where does Warren go? Where does the critical thinker go? Does he address the issues? Does he address the substantial disagreement? No.
There's nothing to address. To be clear, the question that Warren asked was, Žižek, why do you identify as a communist? His answer to that, again, was ranting about Peter Thiel, AI, the environment, war/danger, and now not thinking that a multi-party system can work. Only one of those actually corresponds to communism in theory and in practice, and that would be the uniparty. So this guy is seriously saying that Žižek, who answered question A with 4 answer Z's and 1 answer X, he's not being the disingenuous one. It's Warren that's being the simpleton. Warren, who is he's a better man than I am, because if Zizek did this in front of me, I would absolutely tear him apart. I'd be like, this is the best philosopher you got. You can't even answer a single question. Warren is much, much, much nicer than I am, because he is trying to salvage this conversation by saying, okay, well, you at least appeal to a uniparty. That's somewhat related to communism in reality. I just cannot believe that this is the video that you would wheel out to demonstrate that it's Warren that's the problem. Like, that's ridiculous. What substance is there? There is no substance. These are just random. Dude, I once talked to a schizophrenic guy for like 40 minutes. That was more coherent than what Zizek
immediately jumps to a policy distinction of parties. Of do you have a uni party or do you whatever? Instead of even arguing on the philosophical elements of what.
There is no philosophical elements. This is like my old crackhead neighbor ranting. There's no philosophy.
Žižek is saying. So, maybe that's just a mistake, or maybe he's trying to get some clarification.
No, I'm absolutely for pluralism and so on. But
I thought, did he not just say that he doesn't think a multi-party system would work? I know for a fact he just said that, because my man Metropolitan here springed off of that statement to say, actually, Zizek is more like the far right than people would imagine. So he's contradicted himself. I'm one philosopher.
Asking you a simple question. Do you remember in northern United States, West and southern Canada, there 3-4 years ago, there was a mega heat wave. For a week or two, Seattle and Vancouver were
this is my crazy
warmer than Emirates and Kuwait and so on. Were they to blame? No, they had pretty good, as far as I know, ecological policy and so on. Obviously, something is wrong in the circulation of the air and so on around the Northern Pole, or artificial intelligence. We don't know what is happening there. Really.
Fair enough.
We have...
Hey, do you want a uniparty? No, even though I just contradicted myself. But also, in northern U.S. and on the Canadian border, there was an ecological irregularity. And it's really unfair, because the people who had to suffer the cost, their ecological policies were really good. So clearly, something was going on here. So maybe the ecological policy somewhere else could be affecting that. Okay. And 66 times 14 is 924. Do you have any other random factoids of the world? Like, I'm just taking your word for it, by the way. By the way, why in the world would I ever trust this guy's ecological opinions, ever? In the same way that I don't go to Ayn Rand to learn economics, I don't go to philosophers to learn ecology. I'll go to an ecologist. Like, whatever.
To think.
But in relation to Warren's question, though, it's an interesting one, isn't it? About you being proud to call yourself a communist, and yet many people view communism as just an evil.
The pre-theoretical mode of being with the political organization is self-evidently obvious enough to say this is undesirable. In the same way that I don't even have to really, if you want, I can get into the theory, but just looking at fascism and Nazism, I look at the same thing and I go, okay, well, that's obviously undesirable. You can play all the theoretical games you want, but I'm not playing this game.
Kind of mindset ideology as fascism is killed.
So, like, this is where the issue comes. Where again, I do blame Žižek, because yes, these terms are loaded, and the reality is normal people can't understand them. But notice what's happened here. So Žižek explained.
Yeah, guys, normal people can't understand. Good luck trying to piece together some semblance of clarity, order, or depth in that schizophrenic ranting that didn't even approach answering a very basic question. But Warren is the problem. Warren people can't understand, or excuse me, normal people can't understand my incredibly sophisticated ideas that government does stuff equals communism.
Here's why I call myself a communist. Then he roots it in real world examples and says, how can we...
His real world example was the COVID stimulus check, some random ranting about a Montreal ecological irregularity, and pretty much the idea that anytime the government does something for more than one person is communism. There is no real life example. It's laughable that you want to say it's real life. If you want to appeal to real life and grounding it in real life, well, I'm going to appeal to communism's practical application in real life. I'll even appeal to social democracy's practical application in real life, which we're going to get to later.
Do not address what's currently happening is already a version of communism as I'm describing it. And Warren Smith just...
So our current policies, generally speaking, are already a version of conservative communism. You have to remember that point, because it's going to bite him in the ass in a second.
Pivots completely away to asking, well, so you're calling for a unity? And he's like, no, I'm talking about pluralism. I still want there to be parties. I just think that we have to acknowledge what we're doing is basically communism now. And then here's Morgan's like, well, Warren's got an interesting point.
Yeah, he does.
You know, communists just kill people, right? Just evil. They're...
What if I said, fascists just kill people, right? How stupid. That guy would have a heart attack. Come on. It's a joke. You guys have a way... First of all, I would never defend fascism or Nazism. They're going to go jump off the earth. I couldn't care less about them. But the idea that, can you believe this guy just mentioned the communist death count of 100 million? What a weirdo.
Has to be intentional somewhat.
Doesn't he know that I'm a rationalist who lives in pure theory? Doesn't he know that? Doesn't he know that communism is actually awesome in pure theory?
They're trying to get away from the substance of the argument because they don't know how to argue. They actually don't, it becomes kind of tricky. Damn, the COVID lockdowns are kind of like communism. How do we resolve this? It's a semantic game. It's a semantic battle, but that's what philosophy is usually. So let's see it.
So philosophy is little more than a semantic battle where you just lie and you adopt identities that already have significance shaped by past events. And I guess philosophy is just arguing over surface level semantics.
We'll even just try.
Over 100 million people at least. It's been used in the same way that fascism and Nazism have been used to terrorize and oppress people and so on. So what do you say, Slavoj, to people that say, well, all right, you can be very anti-fascism. Most people are who are not fascist, but you defend proudly being a communist, and yet because you know your history, just how malevolent communism has often been in the history of the planet. So how do you sit those two things?
First, I've written much more than about fascism. I've written about communism. And we don't have time to go into it, but what always fascinated me, and this doesn't make communism any better, is the difference in their functioning. Let's think about one thing. We don't have time to go into it in detail. In communism, you have these show trials, people tortured to confess, and so on and so on. In fascism proper, at its worst, Nazism, you don't have it. It's meaningless. It would have been easy for Hitler to organize a show trial, get 15, 20 leading Jewish figures, torture them to confess. It's meaningless there.
I hope you know, by the way, this was me at a bar one night. I remember once my buddy and I, or my friends and I, had a game where we'd get super drunk at the bar, and then one of us would be a lawyer, and you had to defend the worst possible positions. And I had to defend communism or fascism, one of them. I think this was one of the arguments I gave. I cannot believe that any living person who wants to be taken seriously as an intellect would take the proposition that we should all be communists and not be fascists. Because when communists kill people, at least they put a show trial on first. And when fascists do it, they don't even bother with the show trial. Number one, let's ignore the fact that this exact argument could use the other way, where the Nazis or the fascists could say, yeah, well, you guys are liars. At least we're honest enough to drop the pretense. So that's number one. Number two, we don't have to do either of these. I cannot believe this is the number one philosophy, bro. Please tell me this dude does not think that was an intelligent, insightful remark.
Feature. I like this as a Freudian, these details which tell a lot. You know that in gulags, every year on Stalin's birthday,
So to break this down a little bit, because it sounds like a totally random tangent, and it kind of is. He's not really answering the question well. I think what he's trying to say...
Oh, but when I say it, I'm a right-wing fascist. When I say it, I just can't comprehend Žižek. Okay.
Is that it's important to remember fascism was rooted as being oppositional to liberalism and Marxism. but Marxism was oppositional primarily to liberalism. But that meant that it wanted to overtake the institutionalism that was successful liberalism. It wanted to preserve the rule of law and actually elevate it in its ideal form. But fascism disregarded all of this. It just started a new morality, a post-Christian morality, a sort of might is right, a new set of code. That's a totally different phenomena, and there's no option for reform in that. That's
number one, in the same way that communism apparently wanted to retain the rule of law, well, capitalism wants to make everyone wealthier. I have a feeling if I were to say that to this person, they would say, well, let's appeal to its practical application. So suddenly, pure theory doesn't matter anymore. Suddenly, we're now appealing to how that theory has been applied. But when I do that with communism or social democracy, I can't do that. I have to go into the purely theoretical realm. It's very silly.
That's the argument he's making. He should just spell it out more cleanly, but that's what he's trying to say, I believe.
All the prisoners had to sign a letter to Stalin wishing him all the best. Can you even imagine something like this in Nazism? Gathering.
This is like a Sam Hyde skit. Like, can you even imagine? I mean, think about how awesome it is. I mean, these prisoners, they used to sign Stalin's name on his birthday on the letter card. How sweet is that, guys? That's totally why we should be a communist. Also, I'm the #1 philosopher in the world.
The Jews in Auschwitz, you have to, and so on.
Yeah, I feel like you can tell this is not connecting with either of these guys.
Yeah, because these guys have a IQ above their age.
So I'm not here in any way claiming that Stalinism is nonetheless better. I am saying that Stalinism in all its horror is still part of or legacy of the European Enlightenment. It still has, so...
Why do you identify as a communist? Oh, well, communism, it actually happened. It was a movement that happened in history. People lived under that political structuring organization. Okay, thank you. Hey, why are you a Manchester City fan? Oh, well, Manchester City played a game once in 2008. So
here we totally agree. But what I mean by communism, and I use this term, of course, in a consciously provocative way, is simply a mode of not even control, international regulation. For example,
all regulation implies control. Regulation is power. Power is zero sum. So don't tell me you're not trying to impose control. That's not even a bad thing necessarily. Take restaurants. Ever watch Bar Rescue and you see the disgusting, should be illegal and is illegal, but they're doing it anyways, food that they give to these people? They could kill people. So when you say regulation is imposing control, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but don't lie to me.
Imagine a new COVID. We instantly felt a need to international cooperation. I think market itself no longer functions as global regulator.
Yes. So, and this is what's so critical is that it's almost like he's speaking about the philosophy of economics.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I am so glad you mentioned that. That's really the reason we're doing this video. I'm trying to pierce through this respectfully. Pseudo-intellectualism. What do we know from Heidegger? That the significance of any object is disclosed through a network of relations. So paradoxically, there is more to capitalism than just economics, even though capitalism is an economic system. There is also a philosophical layer of significance that informs the object in this case. The problem is, as we've seen, a lot of philosophers, instead of learning the basics of economics and having the economic node in the network of relations inform their view, they take a purely philosophical node, which is to say a purely subjective, which is why you get, respectfully, this very basic bitch economic drivel where we're not really saying anything. This is the problem with philosophers. They invade other people's subjects, they essentially just ruin it, and then they pat themselves on the back and they think they've got it all figured out because they understand that the whole is greater than the part. Just because someone makes a critique of capitalism, that does not mean said critique is actually high quality. Yeah, there's a philosophical layer of significance. Great. Do you have anything of high quality to add, or are we still going to be getting the same thing I get from my nephew?
In that you could have a state that is totally liberal in its function and appearance, politically at least, but the market is effectively one that is state controlled. We kind of see that today with how successful the Trump administration's currency regulation manipulation has been, especially with allied countries like Argentina, where they've been able to do these cash transfers through these sort of like almost like alchemical currency conversions, where it's like, well, this is kind of like almost like a state economy. This is not the free market. There's so much market intervention at every level
that's not a state economy. That's like saying because school lunch programs exist, that's a state economy. A state economy is when the state plans the economy. It's nothing. Again, please, if you want to learn economics, at least go to an economist first. I'm not saying you can't do the philosophical, but I'm going to tear you up if you don't do the economics.
Comes a question of like, well, what does it mean to be pro or anti-communist? Like, this is a real interesting question. I'm not sure where I even fall in it totally, because it is a compelling, hard to digest thing. But like, where's the critical like thinker interrogation by Warren Smith? Like, it's coming. Surely there's not much time left in the video, but I'm sure.
I'm not trying to be mean to this dude, but like, man, it is giving midwit energy. I can't. It blows my mind.
It's going to come in a minute.
The irony today.
To be clear, this is coming from the guy who's defending Žižek, who said that I'm a communist because Peter Thiel and technology.
I wonder if you would agree
and some ecological event in Montreal.
Or not. The irony today is that of the three big powers, there are more, but let's say generally, United States, Russia, and China. China, precisely because communists are in power there, but communists who learned the lesson, follows more faithfully market rules definitely than Russia or United States.
Yeah, that's the only reason China's economy has increased, because they started embracing free market capitalist principles. Yes, thank you for the admission that capitalism is extremely superior than socialist economics. Thank you.
China is for me, and I am not pro-Chinese. I'm well aware of all.
Let me get Warren's reaction to that.
Yeah. I don't honestly. I don't understand what makes you a communist. If the definition.
Yeah.
Just like start with the framing. We're not going to substance. We're not going to like trying to interrogate what he means by communism. The way, if you don't understand what he means, like why he associates that, you would phrase it as a question. You would try to reframe what he said back to him, steel manning or whatever. But he won't do that. He's trying to tease this out.
Communism is the government or the inability to own private property, and many people would argue that there's not a single real communist country. China's not really communist. They've introduced components of capitalism, but the ideology of communism has been detrimental there, and that's where 50 million people died as a result. But so this goes back to the original conversation of these terms.
Okay, and this is dumb too, because the problem is when you say that's not real communism, well, the communists can say the same thing back to you. It's not real capitalism when the state is the guarantor of your property ownership rights, right? Like, this is like a stupid pedantic thing where...
What? Real...
Clearly what he means by communism is that the mode of production, the economy, the way it functions is one that is intertwined with the state. There's no longer a separate... Now, it doesn't mean, again, obviously, you could always have market interventions, but it would be the removal of this market government distinction and this more interwoven market government.
Yeah, planned economy, just like the Soviet Union and Mao Zedong. Yeah, like, okay, so you have a bunch of examples of its practical application showing and revealing amazing economic progress, right? If you're saying you want to combine or remove the division between market and state, well, yeah, that means if you're going to go to the right, that's a command economy. If you're going to go to the left, which this guy is, that's a planned economy. I ask you again, since considering the fact that we're not purely theoretical beings, what examples do you have in history that this has been a success? And I really hope you don't say the Trump stimulus package, because I already explained how that's ridiculous. It's not the Soviet Union, who couldn't make any bread or food, but made a ton of, I don't know, hides and useless knickknacks and nothing. It's not China, who killed, like you said, 50 million people and had all these famines. Where is it? Where are all these practical, historical examples that are not just in your imagination or in your world of theory, where a planned economy works? Let me hear it. I'm going to be waiting for the rest of my life.
Synthesis that is communist what he's referring to. Again, is it the perfect word? I don't know.
So essentially, he's advocating for the economic thesis, or ethos, excuse me, the economic ethos of let's take decision-making ability and take it from the people who have the most knowledge, interest, and experience in their circumstances, which is the individual, and put it in the hands of economic planners who have none of that. And we're going to let them decide to run our lives for us, and they're going to be shielded from the cost of their poor decisions as we incur that huge cost. That's the economic ethos of a planned economy. If you really think that's effective, then
But
it's wrong.
that's the substance of what he's saying. To pivot to like an argument about like the private property, is it truly communism? It's just, that's not what he's saying.
You just said he wants to erase the distinction between free market and the state that necessitates an erosion of economic property rights. That is a very basic logical deduction or conclusion, whatever it is. I'm not a philosophy guy. I just don't get it. Like, what are you talking about?
It's a very, very weak defense.
Terms have meanings, but they're being thrown around so loosely. So I don't like, what makes you a communist if you're not.
Again, also loosely, what do you mean? Like, he conditionalized everything he said. Again, if you disagree with this,
unlike Žižek, who just went on a rant like my ex-girlfriend, and when I asked her to, I don't know, take out the trash or something, oh well, let me explain to you about the history of the Caribbean and all that crap. All right, that's about the end of this. Be nice to Metropolitan. I'll like his video, and go be nice. Go give him a like. Go give him a watch. I was just having a little fun here. I'm sure he can, if you want to respond and then go at me, that's more power to you, right? There's the internet. If nothing else, I just wanted to offer a different perspective. And I want to pop the pseudo-intellectual balloon. I'm not saying this Metropolitan dude is a pseudo-intellectual, but I'm saying this video is. This Žižek was absolutely pseudo-intellectual nonsense. The fact that this was being looked at as, hey, this is a good job out there, Žižek. It just blows my mind. Again, if you would have told me that Warren came out of this unscathed, I wouldn't have believed you. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for continuing to watch, and I'll see you soon.